The name is Professor William Turnbull. Well, I was a professor as one of the top archaeologists in the world. Think of a museum exhibit, and I'm most likely responsible for the artifacts you are looking at. Though you wouldn't see my real name. I used hundreds of pseudonyms to avoid too much publicity, to avoid those looking to steal from me. I did this for 35 years until I found what I deemed the greatest discovery. A hidden cave in Rome. I found a peculiar wall painting and some out-of-place skeletal remains. There was also writing on the walls that also seemed out of time. The English was too good, and the sentences were too complete to be something from the past. At first I thought it was a hoax, but the fading of the paint and words and erosion on the wall, and the fact that the cave had been sealed for decades ruled that out. And the first words that stood out to me were time travel. I spent several years studying the site and piecing together what everything meant, but still had no clue. I found the names Miriam Belfry, William Johnson, Joseph Peel, Bella Stewart, Javier Rodriguez, Dana Budding, Mohammed Hassan, Sandra Cook, Colonel Luna Lee, and Lieutenant General Winston Stewart. Peel apparently lived in the 1600s in England with Johnson and Cook. There are not files on where they were born, but they all showed up aged for the time, but also strangely healthy. They made money selling secrets of medicine and were considered prestigious scientists in their communities, but their communities seemed to have hoarded this knowledge, and it was lost with their deaths. It seems that they were in this cave, and from what I can tell, they weren't the only ones. 200 years prior, in the 1400s, Winston Stewart and Bella Stewart were here. Records talk of two outsiders who lived in Scotland before traveling to Paris and Rome as peddlers of items that royalty apparently bought, making them rich. With the money, they were given rights by the Pope to study the Colosseum for religious artifacts. Apparently, they disappeared right after they went into the cave, and no one knows where they went. Rodriguez and Hassan both show up in Egypt in the 1800s. They apparently made money as architects and later visited Rome and this cave. They were the ones to seal it up, apparently convincing the government that it was too religious to be disturbed. But they left clues to be found, and in the early 1900s, a Miss Dana Budding discovered the cave and created a new shaft to get to it. This was the shaft I discovered. Budding was apparently employed with the United States. But everything was so top secret that the files were either unavailable or erased. Budding's writing spoke of an ancient artifact that could be found if someone was around the 2020s. Of course, it was the year 2025. It was Budding's writing that also mentioned Luna Lee and Miriam Belfry. So I realized that I needed to find them in order to see what this relic was, and if this was some sort of a time travel experiment in the future that went wrong, or if everyone purposely came to these times. But Miss Lee and Miriam Belfry didn't exist in any public file. Made me think that it was some sort of secret agency, but the lack of knowledge drove me mad. That is until I met Miss Lee and Miss Belfry on their deathbeds. They heard the news about the discovery of the cave too, and recognized the cave painting. They told me everything, the future and the shadows, the prophecy, and that I was the one who left the message and found the relic. They told me of the end of the world, and how they did not remember what happened, but they believed they had been sent back through time. And I thought they were nuts, of course, until they told me things that I had only known. Things I would never tell people. Things I am now recording myself saying to you. The dream I had 5 years ago. There was a woman in the cave, writing. But her eyes were like black holes. She turned her head and screamed, and then her eyes turned normal again. She told me that she was possessed and trying to fight it, but she knew she needed to seal herself in the cave as the shadows were spread thin through time and space and didn't have as much power until several years from now when the great cataclysm would begin. The dream finished with a strange voice asking who I was and that I will be found and dealt with in due time. Time passed quickly after that in my dream, and I saw the woman seal the cave and a strange, shadowy mist leave her body as she perished. When I awoke, the room was dark, and I felt something in the room with me. I felt like I was being strangled. But then it stopped. Lee and Belfry told me about the fantasy football league they created, and how Belfry had an ancestor who was in the league. They played with a replica of the original trophy, but they believed that the original was the relic, and that I was destined to find it. They believed I was special because the shadows couldn't corrupt me for some reason. They asked where I was born. I said a hotel in Washington near a waterfall. They had a look on their faces, but never really told me what that meant. I did learn about the Shadow Brigade and their mission and the years leading up to the end of days. I was still skeptical. I mean, fantasy football? I didn't even like sports, thought they rotted your mind. But they kept talking and I kept listening. Strangely enough, I believed them in the end. There was one question, though. Why me? They told me they would help me, but I never heard from them again, almost like they disappeared. So I began my quest. I spent most of my money, tarnished my reputation, learned from a medium about interdimensional beings and shadow people. I actually studied the paranormal, became an investigator for a while to see if I could find out about these living shadows. A lot of odd things in my travels, but nothing I could tie to my case. I also found the old internet files to this league and watched some videos of the members, and I saw the trophy. Apparently, it was kept by the last winning member when they all retired many, many years after starting the league. That trophy was then passed on before being left behind during a move. And that was the last time anyone had ever heard of it, so I posted on web pages asking if anyone knew where it was, and that I was willing to pay anything for it. Nothing. No responses. A few more years went by and still nothing. I was about to give up when all of a sudden the big break came. I was scouring the web, trying to keep my eyes open from a lack of sleep one night, and I came across an advertisement for a yard sale. Lo and behold, it was it. Somehow this person had it in storage with a bunch of junk and wanted to get rid of it all. Thought it was some sort of a funny gift, an old trophy. And I couldn't believe it. I bought it for just a few dollars and brought it home. I had done it. But then I realized, wait. They told me I would recount this whole story on a message and end it with the fact that I was hiding it away, but couldn't say where. I guess I said these exact words. But I bought a sturdy chest. I found one from a friend who lived back where I was born. He used resins from rocks and caves around the area, said it shined a cool way and that he had never seen anything else like it. I figured, sure, I will help my friend get business while getting something I could lock the trophy in and hide away. I was gone for a year traveling before I found the perfect place. I also used the medium to put a psychic connection on the vessel. Not sure it worked, but it is supposed to alert itself when the final four is known. Something Miss Lee told me I said. I'm not sure, though. But I end the message with this. The prophecy I deciphered from the painting. It said, "An ancient member of a fantasy football league who wins the Green Bowl in Time of the Shadows will be the chosen one to enter the Great Pyramid, drink from the Cup of Champions, and they will open a rift in time and disrupt a dimensional portal that could seal the evil outside our world and start a new era of life on the planet." Perhaps I'm going insane. Perhaps this is all real. Either way, this has been a really amazing adventure. And I hope I made a difference.
Huh? Who could that be? Hello? Who is it?
This is General Thomas Mulberry II, and we must talk immediately.
The world's essence slows, shadows spread from the pyramids to the oceans to the coasts. But behold the test, a smoking gun, a quest passed down for generations. A prophesized hero, the champion. In order to save everyone, thou must drink from the cup. 16 weeks to be the best. Injuries and bias, thou should have guessed. The waiver wire request was denied, but maybe a trade will provide an edge and a chance to be a legend. Fight for humanity, reach the goal. It's a quest for the Green Bowl. Green Bowl.
Welcome to the quest for the Green Bowl, the Shadows of Chaos. I'm your host and creator, Anthony Otso, bringing you these final 4 episodes of the season. That should be a real bang. We'll find out what happens with William Turnbull and General Mulberry a little later, but we have some craziness to get to in our league first. The playoffs are set, and we know the byes and the quarterfinal matchups. Besides previewing those games later, we'll also profile each team. I'll also briefly go over the consolation bracket because, you got to preview everyone that's playing. I always say that making the playoffs in fantasy football is one of the hardest things to do. I've been in leagues where only 4 teams make it, and that is obviously even more challenging. But even in our league with 6 teams making it, it's not a guarantee. We had a 7-7 team not make it, and only 2 games separated the number 7 team from our number 3 team. And with this year's season having 14 games, we all played each other at least once. That meant that the out-of-divisional matchups were incredibly important for tiebreakers and a bit of an edge. And the 3, 6, and 8 teams were literally 3 or less points away from adding 1 or 2 wins during that stretch. Could have changed the whole playoff field. But what happened in the past happened in the past. Now comes the tournament where our records are thrown out the window and everyone starts 0-0. For example, in our 6 previous seasons, the top team, the number 1 seed, has never won a semifinal game. That's why we call it the curse of the number 1 seed. 8 and 5 teams have won 4 out of the 6 titles, and a 6 and 7 team even won a title once. Only 1 team with double-digit wins during the regular season has ever won a title, and that team was a 2 seed that season. The 5 seeds won 2 titles and 3 championship appearances. The 4 seed has won 1 title in 3 championship appearances. The 2 seed has won 3 titles in 6 championship appearances. Whether those trends continue will be up to the insanity that is fantasy football. And this year we can very easily see league firsts in the playoffs. We won't know until the games are played, though. But how did we get to this point? Let's look at the results from the regular season's crazy final week. Starting in the Central Territory, my Great Superior Superb Owls hosted Meow Master at the Great Superior Eye and easily pulled off a 98.32 to 46.1 win. Kittle once again had a big game at tight end with 151 yards and a score, and Deebo Samuel returned from injury to add a rushing touchdown. Mahomes threw for 2 scores, and kicker Brandon McManus and the Saints defense combined for 20 points. Cooper caught a touchdown from Meow Master, and the kicker Younghoe Koo had 3 field goals, but 4 zeros once again did her in. The Superb Owls finished the regular season 10-4 with the 7th straight win, and also earn a first-round bye. Meow Master finishes 2-12, which is the second worst winning percentage in regular season in league history behind McGiblets, who was 1-12 in 2018, and tied for second with 2018 team, the No Names, for fewest wins. In the other Central Territory match, My Heart Will Go On played spoiler to Loki Lebowski Thor in a 111.64 to 98.82 win. At Steel Shores, Aaron Rodgers owned the Bears some more with 341 passing yards and 4 touchdowns, and Javonte Williams added 83 yards and 2 scores of his own. Devontae Adams also found the end zone twice and added 121 yards, and Tucker had 2 50-yard field goals to earn 15 points. Lebowski Thor did get a 2-touchdown game by Melvin Gordon, another 100-plus yard and a touchdown performance by Fournette, and touchdowns by Ayuk and OBJ, but the lack of touchdowns by quarterback Kyler Murray did hurt. My Heart Will Go On finishes the regular season 6-8 overall and will need to play in the consolation quarterfinals. Lebowski Thor falls to 7-7 and misses out on the final playoff berth. In the Western Territory, defending champion and Western Territory champ Galgal hosted the Stellar Bitches at the Golden Sands and survived an 84.84 to 82.38 win. Galgal had 104 total yards and 2 scores by Najee Harris, a 50-plus yard score by Van Jefferson, a defensive touchdown by the Packers, and a touchdown by Darrell Williams to eke out the win. The Stellar Bitches had a player on IR in the lineup for some strange reason and the wrong kicker as well, which hurt not just her, but another team's by chances. Stafford had 3 touchdowns and 287 passing yards. Evans, Robbie Anderson, and Hooper all caught touchdowns as well, but with the Bills' defense going into a slump at the worst possible time, picking up -2 points, it ended up being the demise of the Bitches. Galgal moves to 10-4 and will be the number 1 overall seed with the win. The Stellar Bitches fall to 6-8 and must now play in the consolation quarterfinals. Also in the Western Territory, in what was one of the best matchups of the week, Uncle Justy survived the Siamese Dreamcats 120.52 to 116.38 in a matchup that ended up having huge playoff implications at the Sea of Angels. Josh Allen went off in cheat code ways with 308 passing yards, 109 rushing yards, and 3 total touchdowns. Osborne was a nice waiver pickup with 83 yards and a 50-plus yard score, and Barkley finally went off for 95 yards and a score himself. Hubbard also reached the end zone, and the Browns defense scored as well. Delvin Cook, in a surprise active role, went off despite a torn labrum and a hurt shoulder. Cook had 205 rushing yards for a 5-point bonus and also added 17 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Chase also bounced back from a few rough weeks to tally 79 total yards and 2 scores, and the Cowboys defense went off for 5 sacks, 4 forced turnovers, and a defensive touchdown. Now to the Eastern Territory, as Remember the Titans hosted the multiple scoregasms at Liberty's Watch and pulled off a huge 130.5 to 86.24 win. Remember the Titans was able to get some cheat code action as well, as Taysom Hill had 175 passing yards, but also added 73 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Patterson, Foreman, and Jefferson also scored, and Kupp had his usual 123-yard and a touchdown kind of day. The Titans' defense was the big waiver pickup as they shut out the Jaguars and had 3 sacks and 4 interceptions for 27 points. McPherson also added double-digit points out of the kicker spot. The Scoregasms had 2 touchdowns by Aaron Jones, a rushing score by Tannehill, and over 100 yards each for Godwin and Higgins. Cook also caught a score, and the kicker Matt Gay had 3 field goals, including a 50-plus yarder. But none of it was enough against the juggernaut week by Remember the Titans, who moved to 7-7 and clinch a postseason berth. The multiple scoregasms fall to 5-9 in the worst regular season in her league career and must now play in the consolation quarterfinals. And now in the game of the week, Risky Business hosted Green Acres with an Eastern Territory title on the line at the Old Kingdom. Risky Business is celebrating today as the Eastern Territory champion after a few coaching moves netted him a monster 154.42 to 97.5 win over Green Acres, who had been the number 1 team in the league for most of the season. Things started rough for Green Acres with the key to his game, Darrell Henderson, being ruled out by COVID-19 out of nowhere, which seems to be happening all over the NFL at this point. But not sure it would have mattered here, When you looked at Risky Business's lineup, you had a huge game by Tom Brady once again, continues to spit at the concept of aging. Brady had 363 passing yards and 3 touchdowns, including a 50-plus yard score. Tyler Lockett finally got back to his old ways as well. 142 yards, touchdown, also a 2-point conversion. Mark Andrews is going up those tight end leaderboards. A big game for him, 115 yards and a score as well. One of the keys to the game for Risky Business, Clyde Edwards-Helaire took advantage of the matchup and game script with 2 rushing touchdowns. And Elvin Kamara came back from injury in a huge way with 145 total yards and a very tough touchdown run that he had, pretty much bowling people over. The Chiefs' defense also went off with 4 sacks, 5 forced turnovers, and a defensive score to finish with 27 points, which is pretty high in our league. Green Acres did have a touchdown by Dawson Knox. Herbert added 3 passing touchdowns at the quarterback position. Eckler also found the end zone, but this just wasn't Green Acres' week as he falls to 9-5 and is now a 4 seed in the playoffs and must play this week. Risky Business, on the other hand, moved to 9-5, and with the 2 wins over Green Acres, clinches the division. Also will be the 3 seed as the division champion, has to play this week, just missed out on a bye, but a very good showing by him. And of course, I am joined by Risky Business here in the final game of the week segment of the regular season, though I hope to have some playoff winners coming on here, depending on availability in the next few weeks. Risky Business here is the third one of us actually to win multiple games of the weeks this year. And he's the Eastern Territory champ. So what's going on, man? How pumped are you to pull this win out, win your division, get the 3 seed?
Oh, pretty hyped, man. Yeah, definitely it was an interesting, going into the week. I had a lot of guys that, like you said, needed to bounce back. I was waiting for Kamara to show something. Lockett seemed to be down and out for a while. And there was a lot of just kind of question marks around my running backs too, that I was like, who am I going to play? And so, yeah, to get such a dominant win was a pretty awesome way to end the season.
Yeah, it was your highest point total of the year too. So you got to feel like that's giving you a little momentum here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Helping with this final push, for sure.
So you talked about, looking for Kamara to do something. He's obviously had an injury, missed several weeks. Did you expect him? I mean, I know he had the Jets, which is kind of the cure-all for everyone, but did you expect him to come back as dominant as he was after missing so much time?
I didn't really. I mean, I knew it's Kamara, right? So he's going to put up some points, but I was kind of like, how much are they going to use him? The Saints look rough in a lot of other areas. And so I'm like, are they just going to, hone in on him and shut him down? So yeah, to see him really, really bounce back like that made me excited to see what he can do moving forward.
Are you excited to have him healthy for the playoffs now? I mean, we all need one guy to kind of be the star at this point I don't think any of us are going to have easy matchups from here on out. So how excited are you to have someone like Kamara that could put up big numbers?
Oh yeah, it's insane to be able to get him back. I know for the weeks that he was out, I was very desperate at running back, looking to pick up the waiver wire guy of the week, looking to fill it in with COVID people or injuries, or try to bridge the gaps. And so to really get like an RB1 back and seemingly healthy for this playoff season is you couldn't ask for more.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we're all got to worry about depth. Green Acres was hurt by COVID-19, obviously, this week, losing Darrell Henderson, which, could have mattered if the scores were a little closer. But there's been a lot of cases of COVID all of a sudden, if you're reading the news. It seems to be anyone that could possibly get it. And it could be rough for us in the playoffs. It could literally be our star players out. And then of course injuries can always happen too. That's every year. So are you worried about your depth right now? Because, it is concerning when you look at what's going on.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'm keeping my fingers crossed and, saying a few prayers and, just hoping that, I don't get hit by that. Because I think, my depth is not great in my opinion. Like when it comes to my running backs, especially, I hinge on a lot of like people either being out or injured. I have a few, handcuffs and like things that I'm like, I could play if the situation was right. But if it's not, and I maybe lose one of my big guys, even like an Edwards-Helaire or something, I mean, it could hit me hard for sure. Not to even think about quarterback. Like, hopefully that doesn't, I don't want to have to steer away from Brady any week. Definitely not in the playoffs.
Oh yeah, and he's the number one guy right now, which is kind of crazy. We talked about before, getting hot at the right time definitely helps win titles. That happened to you when you won 2019 when you first joined the league. As a former champion of the league, what do you expect going into the playoffs? When you look at, again, like this might be one of the most. This is at least tied up there with one of the most stacked, tournaments that I've seen in terms of our teams. Like we've all kind of been. Some of us are maybe more inconsistent than others, but we've all put up big numbers. All had over 120 points in some weeks. So, are you expecting this to be a grind coming in here?
Oh yeah. I mean, definitely. Like even like thinking back to 2019 when I was able to make that run. I knew going in that season that it was like you're playing with a lot of really smart people that know what they're doing, making good moves. And always keeping their eye on who's the next guy that can fill in a gap for someone. And so, same like you said, a lot of the teams are already stacked. A lot of the teams are high in points this year, have been averaging good numbers. And so I really was a little sad I didn't get that first round bye. I was watching those close at the end, like hoping and praying. Come on.
Yeah. Couple of points.
Oh, I know. So close. And that would have relieved a lot of my internal stress. And so, I mean, it's going to be a grind. I do like my team as long as we stay healthy and don't get hit by anything weird. I do like the odds, but it's definitely a grind, and you just got to hope that your big guys don't decide to take a week off randomly.
Yeah. And I know about that all too well. But we might be facing in the semifinals if you win. So I'm going to be watching your matchup, pretty intensely against Uncle Justy. What are your initial thoughts going into this matchup? So far the projections make it seem like it's going to be pretty close. So is that what you're expecting?
Oh yeah. I mean, I definitely think it's going to be a real tight game. I definitely don't want to jinx myself in any way. I like the way my team stacks up against his. And I just, like you said, riding off some of that energy from last week, like I'm confident these guys can come in and put up big numbers again. And even with like McLaren giving me a goose egg last week, it's like he hopefully won't do that again. And so, so I like the way we stack up, but it'll be a nail biter for sure. I can't say I'm like feeling relaxed by any means.
Well, definitely good luck to you there. Congrats on making it this far. It obviously isn't easy. I think making the playoffs is in fantasy is one of the hardest things to do with all the tiebreakers and all that we got to deal with and divisions and all that. So, but before I let you go, I do want to get your thoughts. Are you excited for these next 4 weeks as we conclude the post-apocalyptic sci-fi, slightly cosmic horror story that we got going on? I mean, this week, obviously you haven't seen it yet, but other people have seen the beginning of it. So it'll be it's all 4 weeks are going to be some major updates in the story as we conclude it. Are you excited for it?
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see how this story comes to a conclusion, and hope it bodes well in my favor. But definitely, excited to see how it wraps up, and just I loved everything about this whole season. It was sweet.
For sure, man. It should be a lot of fun. That was Risky Business, Eastern Territory champion. And now that we know the playoff field and the seeds, I think it's time we get to know these teams a little bit better. Let's profile the contenders. All right, starting with the 6th seed, I give you Uncle Justy, who played at Skyward Peaks, where he finished 4-3 overall. In his second season, Uncle Justy has now secured 6 seeds in both years. Last season, he upset my third-seeded squad to make the semifinals before finishing 4th overall. Can he upset the 3 seed again? Well, that really depends on which team shows up after a 7-7 season. 6 of those 7 losses came against the 5 playoff teams, including an 88.98 to 76.66 loss to Risky Business back in week 11. Uncle Justy has scored over 100 points 6 times and has won 5 of those matchups, with the biggest point total coming back in week 3 with 139.52 points. The lowest total was in week 7 when he had just 44.78 points. He averaged 96.41 points in 14 weeks. Uncle Justy lives and dies with quarterback Josh Allen, who is currently the number 2 quarterback with 363.06 points. Stephon Diggs is the number 10 wide receiver with 139.2 points, and Hunter Renfrow is the number 20 wide receiver with 116.4 points. Rob Gronkowski is the number 5 tight end with 85.8 points with 6 touchdowns in just 7 games. On to the 5th seed, we get Remember the Titans, who played at Liberty's Watch, finishing 4-3 at his base home. Remember the Titans was the 4th seed in last year's playoffs and ended up finishing as the Green Bowl runner-up. He was the consolation champion in 2019, and he was 3rd in his rookie season back in 2018 as the 6th seed, which is the best finish ever by a 6th seed. After a 1-4 start, Remember the Titans finished the season 6-3 to get into the playoffs. Only one of 3 teams in league history to turn a 1-4 start into a playoff berth, finishing 7-7 this year. Results have been up and down, of course, this year, with a season-high 145.94 points back in Week 6 and a season-low 69.36 points back in Week 12. Remember, the Titans averaged 100.04 points per week and was 2-5 overall against playoff teams. One of those wins did come against his quarterfinal opponent, Green Acres, though. Remember the Titans as the number 1 wide receiver in Cooper Kupp, who has 223.4 points, including an NFL-leading 12 touchdowns. He also has the number 3 wide receiver in Justin Jefferson, who has 178.2 points, and the number 13 wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb, who has 132.8 points. He also has the number 2 tight end in Travis Kelce, who has 121.9 points, and the number 8 running back in Cordarrelle Patterson, who has 166.6 points. Moving to Remember the Titans' opponent now, we get the number 4 seeded Green Acres, who played at Blue Dunes with a dominant 5-2 record. Akers started his league career back in 2017 and earned the top seed before being upset and taking 3rd overall. The next season, Green Acres made it to the championship as the 2 seed, but finished runner-up. He missed out on the playoffs the last 2 seasons, but he is back despite a little bit of a slump in the final 2 games. Green Acres started 1-2 before winning 8 of his next 9 matches, with the 1 loss coming in a high-scoring game by percentage points. He finished 9-5. The season high was 152.92 points in Week 11, and the season low was 84.48 points in Week 13. Green Acres had 3 chances to clinch the Eastern Territory and the number 1 overall seed, but couldn't close it out and must now play in the quarterfinals. And the opponent for Green Acres is a team he finished 1-1 against this season. He was 4-3 against playoff teams, but 1-3 against playoff teams from his own division. Still, Green Acres finished as the regular season points winner, averaging 109.53 points per game. He is led by the number 2 and number 3 running backs in Austin Eckler and Joe Mixon. Eckler has 218.5 points, but is dinged up a bit, and Mixon has 205.8 points. He also has the number 19 running back in Darrell Henderson, who has 130 points, but he missed last week with COVID-19. Green Acres did have the number 14 wide receiver, Adam Thielen, who scored 128.8 points, but he's out right now. He does have the number 4 tight end, though, in Dawson Knox, who has 99.9 points, and the number 4 kicker in Greg Joseph, who has 116 points. The defense is what has really carried him this season, though, with the number 1 Patriots. They have 167 points. Now to the Eastern Territory champion and number 3 seed Risky Business, who plays at the Old Kingdom. He only had a 3-4 record there, but led the league on the road with a 6-1 record. Business needed to rattle off 4 wins in a row to claim the division, including the winner-take-all Week 14 matchup against Green Acres, which also saw him score a season-best 154.42 points. The lowest total was actually in a win when he scored 76.44 points in Week 12. Still, he averaged 109.12 points per game as the league's second highest scorer and was 6-1 against playoff teams, including a win over his opponent, Uncle Justy, in Week 11. The lone loss came against a 2 seed, the Great Superior Superb Owls. Risky Business has the number 1 quarterback right now in Tom Brady, who has 381.16 points. He also has the number 1 tight end in Mark Andrews, who has 132.6 points. He has the number 11 running back in Elvin Kamara, who missed 4 games with an injury, with 146.5 points. He has the number 25 running back, A.J. Dillon, as well, who has 109.5 points. Tyler Lockett is the number 12 wide receiver with 137.3 points, and Michael Pittman is the number 17 wide receiver with 122.3 points. Scary Terry McLaurin is the number 21 wide receiver with 112 points. He now has a defense that is tied for 7th in the Kansas City Chiefs, who have 110 points. Moving on to the 2 seed Central Territory champion, my Great Superior Superb Owls, who play at the Great Superior I, finishing 6-1 there. Herb Owls have now won back-to-back division titles and are off to the playoffs for the 4th time. This is the 2nd time with the first round bye. In 2016, they were the top seed but were upset and settled for 3rd place. In 2017, they took 5th. In 2020, they took 6th. They also have consolation titles in both 2015 and 2018. This season, they finished 10-4 after winning 7 straight to end the regular season. After a 3-1 start, they did lose 3 straight before the strong finish to claim the division and the bye. The best week came in Week 4 with 165.52 points, which was the 2nd best weekly score in league history, and the worst week was in Week 7 with 77.24 points. They averaged 104.93 points and were 3-2 against playoff teams, with 2 of those wins coming against the potential semifinal opponents in Risky Business and Uncle Justy. They have the number 5 quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, who has 318.68 points, but the wide receivers have really been the strong point. Number 2 Deebo Samuel, who has 190.8 points, and number 6 Tyreek Hill, who has 159.4 points, have been mostly solid. They also now have the number 20 wide receiver in Jalen Waddle, who has 113.2 points. It also doesn't hurt to have the number 3 tight end in George Kittle, who has 111.1 points despite missing 3 games, and the number 1 kicker in Nick Folk, who has 135 points. They also have the number 12 running back in Nick Chubb, who has 145.8 points, And then number 22 and 23 running backs in Josh Jacobs and Myles Gaskin, who have 117.8 and 114.3 points respectively. The 10th best defense in the Miami Dolphins, who have 106 points, makes this one of the deepest and strongest lineups in the league if everyone clicks at the same time. Lastly, it's time to check in on the number 1 seed, Western Territory champion and defending league champion Galgal. Galgal plays at the Golden Sands, finishing 6-1 overall at his home base. First made the playoffs in 2017 as a 6th seed and won the quarterfinals match before ending up 4th overall. The second time he made the playoffs was last season when he quietly earned a 2 seed and won the whole thing. This year he will be attempting to become the 3rd 2-time champion in league history and the first team to win back-to-back titles. But he first must break the curse of the number 1 seed. Galgal has won 6 straight matches that helped him earn the Western Territory crown and the top seed to finish 10-4 overall. His best game was in Week 6 when he dropped 143.1 points, and his worst game was in Week 2 when he scored just 64.28 points. He was 4-2 against playoff teams, with the losses coming against Green Acres, a potential semifinals opponent, and Risky Business. Galgal averaged just 97.53 points per week, which is second worst of the playoff teams, above only the 6-seeded Uncle Justy. But Galgal has a monster duo at running back with number 1 Jonathan Taylor, who has 274.4 points, and number 5 Najee Harris, who has 181 points. He also now has the number 24 running back in Darrell Williams, who has 111.9 points. Galgal has the number 11 wide receiver in Mike Williams, who has 137.5 points, and the number 23 wide receiver in Van Jefferson, who has 107.9 points. He also has the number 4 defense in the Denver Broncos, which have 129 points. This season's championship bracket looks to be extra intense with these fantastic teams in play for the Green Bowl title. But besides the matchups, the potential Green Bowl MVPs, the inevitable heartbreaks, and the crazy twists and turns that will determine who moves on and whose championship hopes die, we are also fighting to save the world from evil shadows. Before we preview these matchups, let's find out what happened when General Thomas Mulberry II dropped in to see William Turnbull.
So what is this about, General?
I've been assigned to the case of our missing official, Colonel Luna Lee. She went AWOL, and it is very important we find her for national security reasons. I've been talking to people, and they say you've seen her. Is this true?
I'm not sure what you're talking about, General. I've seen a lot of people through the years.
Do not play dumb with me, Mr. Turnbull. I know you've seen her. Do not test my patience.
And so what if I have? I'm a paranormal investigator and former archaeologist. Many people visit me for my work, and as far as I know, you have no right to know what I have talked about with my clients unless you have a warrant.
I'm not going to ask you again. What do you know?
Okay. First, let me ask you a few questions, General. 1. In my research, through the past 10 years, I've done extensive detective work on names of people and tried to find out about a Colonel Luna Lee. She doesn't exist in any public file. How can you explain this?
Classified information. You're really starting to annoy me.
Second, in my research, I also never heard of you. So how can I be so sure that you're a general?
William, it seems like you are answering my question without meaning to. Where is it?
I'm unsure of what you mean.
Do not make me get angry. You humans never seem to know when danger is present, almost like you're drawn to it. Made it so easy in your future.
You're the one from my dream, aren't you?
Where is it, William? You know what I speak of.
In a safe place that I will never tell.
Ah! I cannot fight it for long, William. You must run. I know the plan. You must run.
If you do not tell me the location of the relic, I will make
I'm not afraid of you. I know you cannot harm me, or I would already be infected or dead.
I do not need to do either. Regardless of your power, I am still stronger than anything in your universe. You could have made things easy for me, but my plan will draw out this relic. The prophecy is just a concept caught in a time loop. You wouldn't have known about it if I hadn't attacked the Shadow Brigade. They wouldn't have known about it if it wasn't for the corrupted flash drive I was about to turn into the FBI. The real prophecy is that I will destroy the one with the relic inside my realm at the Great Pyramid, and I will rule your pathetic universe for all of eternity.
I don't believe you, for the need of such an elaborate plan is redundant. If you really had that much power, you could have always found me earlier and destroyed the relic then. You don't have as much control as you would like us to think, do you?
Enough of this. With my power, I would like to show you your future and the playground I created.
Oh, so while we have more information on this prophecy and the person who hid the green bowl, it seems like the shadows have a grand master plan that might conflict with our quest. No matter, the games must go on. First, breaking down the consolation quarterfinals briefly, number 9, the Stellar Bitches, hosts number 12, Meow Master, at Misty Forest. Normally, Meow Master is the clear underdog, but with the Stellar Bitches also banged up, the Bitches only come in with a 54% chance to win, and even that is volatile. Jalen Hurts versus Matthew Stafford, Mike Evans versus DeAndre Hopkins, and the Bills versus 49ers defense are all keys to this matchup. Second, number 10, My Heart Will Go On, hosts number 11, the Multiple Scoregasms at Steel Shores. Multiple Scoregasms come in as the favorites with a slight 52.5% chance to win. Guessing this will be a close one. Aaron Rodgers versus Tannehill, DeAndre Swift versus Aaron Jones, and Devontae Adams versus Chris Godwin are some keys that could make this close. And now we get to the games that really matter, the championship bracket quarterfinals, which are taking place at the Tower of Lightning. First up, we get number 3, Risky Business, taking on number 6, Uncle Justy. Risky Business enters his quarterfinal with a 54.7% chance to win, and he'll be looking to buck the trend of upsets in the 3 versus 6 matchup in our league's history. There are several matchups to watch, of course. The battle at quarterback should loom large here with Tom Brady, the top quarterback, and Josh Allen right behind. Brady is a touchdown throwing machine, and Allen is a cheat code type of running back that can gain extra points on the ground. Tyler Lockett versus Stephon Diggs is another key here. Diggs started very slow, but has picked it up lately with a nice stretch. Lockett started fast, went through a big slump, and then broke out again last week. The Kansas City Chiefs versus the Los Angeles Rams defense is another key matchup. The Chiefs defense has been dominant lately, but the Chargers offense is pretty good. The Rams defense did well against the Cardinals last week, but have been very inconsistent. Turnovers and sacks will most likely be big here. The battle at running back is also big in terms of who will score more touchdowns, but I am looking at 2 tight ends as the keys here. For risky business, I'm looking at number 1 tight end, Mark Andrews. Andrews is going up against a Green Bay defense that has allowed 610 yards and just 4 touchdowns against tight ends this season. That makes Green Bay the 10th ranked team against that position in fantasy. Andrews might also not have Lamar Jackson throwing to him, but Andrews did score a touchdown last week and comes in with 926 yards and 6 touchdowns this season on 75 catches. He's also been targeted 109 times and will most likely see a lot of targets again against the Packers team that will most likely score a lot of points themselves. For Uncle Justy, he's got a top 5 tight end too in Rob Gronkowski. Gronkowski's been a beast when healthy with 6 scores in his last 7 games, but also has a tough matchup against New Orleans, which is ranked 7th against tight ends. The Saints have allowed 536 yards and just 3 touchdowns to the tight end position. Gronkowski is also not much of a yards threat with 498 this season, topping 100 just once. But when he scores in bunches. Gronkowski has multiple touchdowns in 3 games, and Brady likes to target him in the red zone. Those 2 players could be the game changer in what might be a very close matchup, a very contested battle to move on to the semifinals. Lastly, we get number 4 Green Acres taking on number 5 Remember the Titans in the other quarterfinal. Remember the Titans has a 68.1% chance to win at the moment, with the winner of this quarterfinal historically making the championship game in our league. Green Acres might tweak the lineup if Darrell Henderson is back, but Austin Eckler and Joe Mixon versus Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson should be big here. Eckler is a little dinged up, but can score in the passing game as well as on the ground. Mixon tends to get volume on the ground and through the air as well. Kupp and Jefferson are 2 of the best wide receivers in the league, with Kupp leading the NFL in touchdown receptions. AJ Green versus CeeDee Lamb and Rex Burkhead versus Donta Foreman might also be big in terms of touchdowns. In the tight end battle of Travis Kelce, who has struggled lately, and Dawson Knox also looms large. But the 2 keys for me in this matchup are pretty clear. For Green Acres, I'm looking at the Patriots defense. The Patriots are the number 1 defense this season. They got 32 sacks, 19 interceptions, 7 fumble recoveries, and 3 defensive touchdowns. But the Colts have running back Jonathan Taylor, who seems to be matchup proof. Stop Taylor from reaching the end zone, and the Patriots should have a pretty good game, especially with Carson Wentz being susceptible to the interception. But allow him to score, and the Patriots defense could lose a lot of points and maybe be lower than they've been all year. For Remember the Titans, I turn to quarterback Taysom Hill. Hill is a tough matchup against the Buccaneers and isn't necessarily the best passing quarterback, but he can score in big ways with his legs. Hill is averaging 6.6 yards per carry and has 278 yards and 5 touchdowns on 42 carries this season. 174 of those rushing yards and 2 of those rushing touchdowns came in the last 2 games when he was named the starter. Hill is also going up against a Bucs defense that just allowed over 100 yards and a score on the ground against Josh Allen. The Buccaneers are good against the run, ranked 4th against running backs, allowing 829 yards and 6 touchdowns, but they have also allowed 294 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns against quarterbacks. They also have allowed 23 passing touchdowns. So if Hill also adds to his passing totals, he could be in for a monster game, which would be good for Remember the Titans and very bad for Green Acres. And that's the show for the week. I hope you enjoyed it. Next week, we will continue with our theme story And we're going to find out exactly who the mysterious stranger is. Oh, man. Plus, we'll have our semifinal matchups and whose quests ended. It will be crazy fun. Before we go, here are the final power rankings headed into the playoffs, broken up between the championship and consolation brackets.
Please follow the SunDried Tomatoes YouTube channel and watch content including original shows like Legends of the Diamond, random reactions, and Brewing the Facts, the SunDried Tomatoes podcast in video form, and other sports, brewing, or entertainment-related videos. You can like the Facebook page and follow me on Instagram at eclectic_yotso for news updates and just to get to know me better.